Thank you so much for making time for this.
Thank you for having
Um,
me.
I'm really excited for this.
Thank you.
I
And thank
think,
you for having me. Thank you for what you're doing for entrepreneurs, the content you create, the inspiration that you provide. So I'm excited to be here.
I remember once bumping into you and you're like, sometimes I see you on Twitter, just like, go back to work. And I
Yes.
was like,
Yes.
I don't want that to be my
Yes. No,
reputation.
I love it. I love it. I see it. I'm like, okay, back to work. Let's do it.
Do you remember the personal moment or the experience that you had that made you go, I want to build something and this is what I want to build?
Great question. I don't know if it was an exact moment, but maybe a series of moments. Um, I've always wanted to do purposeful work, and I believe that I wanted to use my talents to make a positive impact in the world. And throughout my career, I kind of got the hints of what that could be. I saw the impact technology was having, particularly in financial services, across the continent. Think products like M-Pesa, and what that meant for financial access. And so I always knew it was going to be tech, right? Where we asked ourselves, how could you use technology to improve the lives of people in South Africa and more broadly across the continent? And then the healthcare piece, I come from a healthcare family. My mom's a doctor, my aunt's a doctor, my granny's a midwife, my sister's about to study medicine. So the bug completely skipped me, but it's come back full circle, right? And of course, healthcare is a very impactful space. And it was actually during COVID where I was working on the COVID vaccine rollout program in the project management office, where we were essentially managing the rollout of the vaccine program with the public sector and the private sector. And it hit me in that moment that actually maybe now is the time. And being a woman, I was going through my different women's health issues, and my co-founder at the time was as well. And we kind of looked at each other and said, why is no one building a solution for women's health at scale? And that's how Zoe started.
Yeah. I always think like that personal experience really affects, what eventually you build, but also how you build it.
Absolutely.
Do you remember the intention that you had right at the beginning about what the problem you wanted to solve was going to be with Zoe?
Yeah, absolutely. Being a bit of an empath, I knew that the fundamental thing we had to do was build community. And that was actually the first layer of our product, of our business that we built. And community is an interesting topic in women's health, right? Because it's very, in traditional society, there's already a lot of community around women's health and support, right? So for example, I'm Betty. When I had a baby, my mom came to be with me, right? And so there's a lot of communal and community focus and support. But that's also echoed in the digital world, right? So when we look at, for example, we did extensive research on Facebook, and we saw that in every market in which Facebook is active, the most popular and most engaged groups were mom groups, whether Facebook Russia, Facebook India, Facebook Malaysia, Facebook Kenya. And so it's women coming together and sharing advice and supporting one another. And so we knew that that had to be the foundation because community is such a big deal, and there wasn't enough of it. So yes, around motherhood, there's some community, but across all other seasons of womanhood, it tends to be quite lonely. Many people reflect on it and say it's very lonely going through menopause or going through a miscarriage or going through fertility challenges. So we knew that community had to be the foundation, and it remains the foundation of what we build, how we communicate, how we build trust, how we connect with our members. And that's why we call them members, not patients, not customers, not users. They're members of our community.
Yeah. So what's the biggest difference between the Zoe Health that you launched then and the Health that you're building now?
Look, I think the commonality is really around solving a big problem with access to healthcare. I think the big difference, and entrepreneurship is really hard, and you have to be willing to fail and fail multiple times and try different things. And initially we went in with this concept of this telemedicine business and telepharmacy, and it was wonderful, like great reviews, people loved the experience, but it was just so incredibly difficult to scale. And D2C or direct to customer businesses are incredibly tough to scale in South Africa without a ton of capital. And while we had raised money, I think we just didn't have the acquisition muscle to be able to sustain what it would take to acquire people individually. And so, we took a moment. I remember it was 2023 towards the end, and it was like, is this the end? Like, what's going to happen? And at that moment, we made key decisions around a pivot. And what we did is, on the consumer side, we had seen through our telepharmacy that women were looking for natural products to support their women's health journeys. We would say, no, book a consult with a doctor. And they'd say, no, I don't want to talk to the doctor because I don't want a prescription that I'm going to have to be on for the next, my reproductive years. Do you have something natural? And that basically then created a light bulb moment where we decided to then formulate our own range of bespoke women's health supplements that would essentially support women from puberty to menopause. Because supplements and nutrition today is very single ingredient focused, right? So you go to a shop, you see vitamin C, or you see vitamin K or vitamin D. But women's health, as women go through certain seasons, their bodies need certain nutrients, right? And so our clinicians came together, doctors, scientists, dietitians, really came together and wrestled with these formulations, and we created them and then worked with a very highly regarded lab in South Africa that produces these for some major brands like USN and Biogen to actually formulate them. And that was really the beginning of our new consumer products business. We launched that last year, middle of last year, after quite a lot of robust testing, launched online through the likes of Takealot, Amazon, our own platform, and most recently launched at Clicks, and will be live in Dis-Chem in September.
Incredible.
So, I mean, that's definitely, it's a different feeling to be much closer to product market fit than we've ever been, but also to listen to our customers and listen to our members, right? So it was through that data, through that process of actually realizing, sure, this is a great product that we had already built, but actually commercially what actually could make sense is building a consumer products business. And so we have that business unit, which is exciting, growing very quickly, still under the Zoe brand. Then, because we had built all this technology, right, this platform, and we had acquired licenses like our pharmacy license and practice license, we realized that there was an opportunity to do something in the B2B space with all the back-end work we had already done.
Yeah.
And so being in South Africa, we all know access to healthcare is incredibly challenging for everybody, but I think especially for blue-collar workers or frontline workers or gig workers, because private healthcare, very difficult to access, very expensive to access, and public healthcare isn't always efficient. So people are losing 1 day of work or 2 days of work sometimes seeking healthcare. And so we essentially went out there, started engaging with corporates to say, would this be a benefit that actually solves your problem of absenteeism and productivity when individuals are calling in sick for basic primary care issues? And to the individuals we're speaking to, we were saying, would this benefit you? And at the time, it was a very funny story. We did a mini focus group with a fast food chain group of workers. And I remember asking them, like, this is a cool app, you're going to get it. Like, would you use it? And they're like, CC, I'm not going to use your app for healthcare. And I'm like, well, it's supposed to help you. And they said, yeah, but the thing is, I don't really have lots of data or Wi-Fi at my house for a fancy app, for video calls, that complicated stuff. And secondly, I don't really have space on my phone. I mean, it's a smartphone, but I'm not deleting TikTok, WhatsApp, or Instagram for your little health app.
No.
I ain't doing that. Sorry, girl.
Yeah.
And that was a really great light bulb moment, because then we realized if you're going to build something for people, you have to understand what's the best way to deliver that. And so that's when we pivoted it to WhatsApp-based, fully WhatsApp-based, given the very high WhatsApp penetration rates in South Africa, over 90%. And a way to make it really accessible. So many people use WhatsApp, they understand it. You don't have to create an account. You don't have to, get a one-time code in your email. Some people don't even have emails. And so that's kind of been the new B2B product that we launched for both men and women, but very specifically targeted at blue-collar and underserved workers. Where they can pay anything from 50 Rand to 300 Rand per employee per month. And that's what the corporates essentially would sponsor for them, or we work with them to implement.
Yeah. I think about just the art of pivoting. And I do say art because I think
art or just stumbling forward and just getting up and falling again and getting up and falling again.
I think it's very important. More entrepreneurs speak about like those points where you understand that a pivot is necessary. You spoke about looking through data, speaking to customers. How did you inform what the pivot needed to be? But also, how did you navigate that sort of shift from B2C to like a B2B model and like maybe B2B2C?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look, I think, like I mentioned, I think understanding your customer is very important, and understanding the qualitative data, but also the quantitative data. Beyond that, I think it was also about understanding macroeconomic or macro trends, right? So the women's health space has been booming quite significantly in markets like the US and the UK. So doing a lot of research on that, right, and what it's looked like in other markets, how that has grown, how these products have evolved. And so we then combined the insights from our members and then the insights from the market. And then importantly, which I think is not something I did or we did in the first phase of our company, really looking at the commercials. I think especially when you're in healthcare, you want to make an impact. You're like, let's go do this. But you're not really asking yourself, does this business model make sense? And will it be sustainable in the long term? And so a combination of those three facts. So we spent a lot of time before making the pivot. Now it wasn't just, okay, let's just go do this thing. It was about understanding those three pieces of key data. And I think the commercial piece, I wish I had done it earlier. It's one of those, the school fees that you pay, of really, really being robust, understanding unit economics from the beginning, and not just hoping that VC funding is going to solve it and let's just focus on growth, right? So from day one, you understand each and every element of your top line and your costs, and then your resultant bottom line. And I think that definitely happened a lot more in this phase. For example, even before we went to market with our B2B offering, I actually worked with an actuary who was a consultant of ours. And I said, I'm a former management consultant, but I don't have modeling skills like you, right? I cannot build a complex pricing model that's really going to tell us in the long term, can this business be sustainable? We want to make it very affordable and very accessible, but what does this mean over time? And, she spent a couple of months with us really building this very, very robust model. And that's the kind of thing I wouldn't necessarily have done, 2-3 years ago when we started Zoe, right? Even before going to market, starting to pitch to clients, is really understanding those commercial fundamentals. And where necessary, getting the right experts to help guide that. And so that was a big piece that informed the pivot. And by the time the decision comes, then you're fairly sure that it will be somewhat okay. I mean, you can never predict the future, but you figured you're building something people want, so people are going to buy it. You're building something where the macro trends are leaning towards that. And then thirdly, you're building something that's commercially viable and commercially defensible in the long term.
How do you balance, you're mentioning just like figuring out that end of things, the sustainability, the sort of growth, what that's going to look like, and modeling it in a very academic way, versus I really care about this problem. I want to solve this problem.
Yeah.
We'll figure out the other stuff later.
We're going to hope and pray it's going to work out. Yeah.
What does it take to navigate between these different ways of doing things?
Sure. That's a great question. I think the right answer is that eventually you don't have to, right? So if you are building something that's commercially sustainable, that's actually helping people, right? Our products and our services help people. You are actually meeting your impact goal and your impact need. And ironically, the more sustainable you are, the more people you can help, the more you can keep going to do that, versus just kind of going on a blitz and just hoping it works itself out. So I think, before maybe I used to think about it a little bit separate, right? And it's just like, let's just go out there. We've got a great product. Let's just keep spending to get more people to use it. Whereas today it's saying, let's make sure the commercials are right, because as that is correct, that means we can actually serve more people and serve them for much longer versus, a few years and then having to close down.
Do you remember a moment of reflection, a moment of pause where you're like, this pivot worked, and we really are growing into our body as a founder, as a
Yeah.
co-founder, as a startup, as an organization to build this thing.
Yeah. Um, I think it was when we got our first 5-star review for our supplements. And it wasn't from friends or family or anyone we knew. We kind of put them out there. And I'll never forget it. It was a woman who's been suffering or dealing with polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a chronic reproductive health issue, for the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years. No, 10 years or so. And she came across our nutritional supplement for PCOS. And she wrote this extremely long review, and she spoke about how it changed her life and how it really helped her. She finally got her cycle. She's now thinking of conceiving, and what that meant for someone who's been living in a lot of frustration and pain for 10 years was really meaningful. And so that felt like, wow, if we can find more people like her and solve more of, and give them this product, or have them experience this product, it means we can grow, and it's something that people want, something that actually works and makes a difference. I think on the B2B side, it was definitely when you start to get traction from customers, and like now companies are willing to pay for this service, right? And not just pilots. I mean, we did a few pilots to really make sure, again, that it was a working product, right? So that both from the employer side, but also from the employee side, this was a valuable thing. And those are unpaid pilots. And so you kind of do them, you get good feedback, but it was really when like people are like, okay, I'm willing to go ahead with this, and I think it'll be very good. And recently, we began onboarding one of the largest retailers in South Africa, and when those people at the enterprise level are saying, we see value in this, and I think this is fantastic, it's very affirming. And then when the employees then say, what a cool product, this is a no-brainer, I think it really then started to click that maybe we're closer to product market fit than we've ever been, which is very exciting.
How do you celebrate?
I don't. Look, I think, and unfortunately, entrepreneurs sometimes, you struggle to celebrate because you're not quite where you want to be. You always chasing the next milestone. So yeah, I think for me, it's just being grateful in my heart. I think, I don't know, maybe we'll celebrate when we get to profitability. I don't know, but even then, I'll be chasing the next target. And I think that's often something we don't talk about. I think with entrepreneurship, it can be incredibly anxiety inducing. I mean, you've touched on topics around mental health for founders. And yeah, so I think it's something that I personally need to work on. But yeah, we should celebrate more, even incremental milestones.
Yeah.
And not just kind of aim for, no, but we're still not there. So it's something I need to practice. Keep me accountable, and hopefully I'll get better at it.
I like throwing questions like that at people because they're just like, wait, I thought we were talking about business. Where's the joy?
Exactly.
You spoke about how the community of Zoe is the core of this. It's been important throughout the journey. It was the reason why this started and the intention. What have the women that are part of this community taught you? But also, how have they shaped the platform as it evolves?
Fantastic question. Our community has been, I mean, it's foundational, but it's kind of gone through many iterations, and it's about to go through, hopefully, its final iteration because we're relaunching it. But more than anything, what the women in our community have taught us, many of them have kind of gone from platform to platform as we've been migrating, is that there's immense power and selflessness in that community, right? So nobody's trying to be like, what's in it for me? What are you going to help me with? It's a person posts and the community rallies around that person and just gives. So I think that realization around, giving, and how a community, especially if it's well structured and well built, will actually almost run itself, right? You just need to moderate here and there, but you're not really thinking about, how do I grow this? Why aren't people engaging? Because you're solving a problem, people are connecting. How it's shaped the platform, I think it's shown us how incredibly powerful it can be, one, as an end in itself, in and of itself. So how we're providing education, safe spaces, support from credible healthcare experts in a safe space. Like that's like a fantastic achievement. But in the second way is like, how are you using that community to build trust in your brand, to introduce people to your various products and services? So by the time they actually do want to explore a supplement or want to book a consultation, they're doing it from a place of trust. I trust this place. Which then also helps you serve them longer, right? In the longer term, because it's like, Zoe is my home, Zoe is my safe space, Zoe is my community. And so as I transition through my various phases of womanhood, from puberty right through to menopause, I know I can find something, I can find help, I can find the right support here. And I think that's a very important lever. I think it differentiates us a lot. And something that I'm really excited to keep building and doing really, really well. I mean, this next phase of our growth, we're going to be doing a lot more, not just online events, but physical events where, people can connect with one another. You don't have to feel lonely in your season. You can get the expert support and the advice. You can laugh, drink a mimosa, and really just connect with women and healthcare experts. So I'm really excited to build on that concept of community and grow it.
What advice would you give founders that are building in the healthcare space, which I do think has a lot of regulation? It does also have a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
You're dealing with people's lives and you're dealing with people's health, which is, it makes the odds and just like the challenges so much more difficult. But also, what advice would you give to someone that's building a mission-oriented startup where the purpose matters, the impact matters?
Yeah, look, healthcare is very difficult. I think around the world, it's known as one of the most challenging industries, and that's because it's incredibly complex. So the first thing I would say is really understand how the healthcare ecosystem works. I have worked at, medical scheme. I've worked at a healthcare provider. I've worked in different spaces in healthcare. I've worked at hospital group. So kind of having that understanding was quite helpful. The second thing, which kind of leads into the commercial piece, is really understanding who is the payer in healthcare, right? And it differs around the world. Of course, in places like the UK, in Europe, where they have nationalized healthcare, the main payer is the government. So if you're going to be building something, you have to figure out who's going to pay for this thing. And in those markets, then you're essentially building for the government, the NHS, for example. In the US, it's mostly insurance companies as well as some employers. And in South Africa, it's really medical schemes and the government. And now we're starting with employers. So I think really understanding those pieces is critical, and understanding how you deliver that. Now, in terms of mission, and I think healthcare is very similar to like education in many ways. I think, again, solving the commercial piece and really working to figure out what is my business model to solve this problem. And your business model doesn't have to be, exorbitant. You don't have to be balling out of control. But what is the commercial model that will make this model sustainable? Because that in and of itself helps you access more people, actually helps you with your mission versus the other way around. And so I know a fantastic ed tech startup that's, done hundreds of thousands of lives, but they're commercially sustainable. And I think those two things can be true. I think for a long time, people think like being mission-led and mission-driven is divorced from, being commercially viable. And I don't think that's the case anymore. So yeah, that would be my advice. Really focus on the commercial piece and figure that piece out, because then that solves the second piece, which is really now you can serve more people, you can help more people.
Fundraising in health tech is considerably harder than other industries. Other industries is just side-eyeing fintech with all its like money bags.
Yeah, I was about to start Zoe Fintech. I was like, no, let's just do a fintech.
Just add a wallet. Just add a young wallet.
A young wallet.
A young wallet. Hi, fintech, we are in. What did it take to raise a seed round in a down market where maybe investors are a lot more risk averse and they are asking a lot more of founders and startups in order to fund them?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we raised kind of during the hype of 2021, 2022, and actually haven't raised since then. And I think while we were going through our pivot, we were trying to talk to investors. And many of them, to your point, it's a fundraising winter. And many of them were saying to us at the time, you have to find a model that works, that's scalable enough, that makes sense for venture capital. And they loved our idea around the B2B product, but they were like, we need to see more traction. And so we actually weren't able to fully raise, right? And I think part of it was also then figuring out that our consumer business essentially also provides us that sustainability to help us grow sustainably, right? So we've got a consumer business, our online pharmacy, our supplements, and our home test kits that are good margin, traditional commerce, like you buy one thing for R1, you sell it for R2. And that definitely helps in the piece around sustainability, so that you're not over reliant on venture capital and people's targets about what where you should be, right? And it buys you time and flexibility to then build your foundations for this super mega B2B platform that can really scale not just across South Africa but across the continent and even the world. And so I think that was a good lesson as part of the pivot around how do we ensure that we sustainable, so that you are not just solely relying on venture capital, and you're actually creating a mixed funding structure where you're partially self-funded, in some way you're doing debt and working capital, and then really to supercharge your growth for platform work, you're doing venture capital. So yeah, I think that's been the big lesson, because it's really tough out there. And the sooner I think companies can get to that sustainability piece and just figuring out like how this looks by itself, I think the easier then it becomes to have conversations with investors, because then you can go to them and say, listen, I've got a very sustainable business. Parts of it are even profitable. This is what I want to do. And I think that creates that de-risks a lot, even for the investors.
Yeah. So you've been part of the Google Growth Academy for AI in health. And what does it mean to you to be part of these sort of platforms, these initiatives, but also how are you guys now using AI into the work that you're doing?
Look, I think it's awesome. I mean, I love these programs and initiatives, because I think across different programs, there's definitely something to receive, right? Whether it doesn't always have to be funding, but access to networks and investors. And I think our Google AI program, which was across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, gave us a couple of things. One, it gave us access to peers that were thinking around building AI solutions in healthcare in Europe, Middle East, and Africa, which is pretty cool, right? Two, it really it gave us access to the Google ecosystem that you otherwise maybe would not have had access to. I distinctly remember the Google chief medical officer came to give us a talk at the launch of the program in Paris. And she spoke about AI and everything they'd done with MedPalm LLM. And I raised my hand and I was like, look, doc, I love it. It's fantastic. But a lot of this AI has probably been trained on Western data sets. How are you thinking about what this looks like for people in the developing world, especially in South Africa, in Africa, I mean? And, she was super stoked. She was like, listen, please call me afterwards. Let's talk, let's figure out what we can do, because it's part of the problem they want to solve, right? And part of what they want to do. And so through that program, we were able to get access to, fantastic engineers that were able to help guide our AI strategy. And we were able to get access to the Google MedPalm LLM, which I think we were one of 2 or 3 companies in Africa that had access to it at the time. And through that, we essentially are experimenting with different ways to implement AI. I think it's important to think about how we do AI in healthcare very responsibly. The regulation has not caught up yet. There's a lot of work governments are still trying to figure out and what to do around, like, how do we regulate this thing? And so I think the pace of implementing that in healthcare will be and should be a bit slower than in other industries, because we have to put in the right safeguards. And so because of that, one of the main ways we're implementing AI, and it's currently in testing, is with our practitioners and our clinicians. So we've got doctors, healthcare experts on our platform, and these are the ones that do the consultations with the patients. And for them, having an AI assistant that can help them in their case, right? So the AI isn't the one diagnosing, but it's actually making the clinician faster, more accurate. it's coming with a lot more data that the clinician may not have access to, and can make the answers and what the clinician advises better. And in a country and on a continent that where our provider or our doctor patient ratio is really, 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 really high, it means, we can actually serve more people using AI because our clinicians can work faster, more efficiently, and still provide a really great quality of service. And so that's one way that I think AI can be brought in responsibly, because it's not the one saying, hi, I'm Dr. AI, this is what's wrong with you, here's a script, but it's really just helping clinicians. And I think over time, as the regulation works itself out, as we've tested rigorously, I mean, the Google team has a massive team working on this LLM, clinical LLM, and as much as it's passed many clinical tests, it's still in rigorous testing until we can get to a point where we feel comfortable enough that it can, support patients. So I know people use AI themselves for, ChatGPT is telling them all sorts of things, but I think being a company in healthcare, we have to be a lot more thoughtful and responsible with how we put that in. So that's our first test, and as soon as we're ready, then we'll roll it out to all of our clinicians. But yes, I think huge potential for AI, especially on the continent with your limited resources. But I think we just have to make sure that we get it right, and we're thoughtful about how we implement it.
Throughout this conversation, we've spoken about South Africa's healthcare system, some of the gaps that might be there as well. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in building within this industry? But also just what advice you'd have for someone that's going, I've seen a problem that specifically speaks about healthcare in South Africa. How do I navigate that?
Look, South Africa is complicated because I think in many ways it mirrors a combination of a government-managed healthcare system like the NHS, and very much also there's a big private sector. And I think there are obviously lots of debates, as we all know, kind of ongoing about NHI and should it be implemented, should it not be implemented. So again, I think understanding the nuances of the market, there's actually no healthcare market like South Africa. There's no place pretty much in the world where you have the unique and complicated dynamics that we have. So again, I think understanding those pieces of the puzzle and how they work together, I think is important. And I think what's also critical to also understand is that vast majority of people in this country are serviced by the public sector. And, that means how you think about building a product that people will pay for, you have to be very thoughtful about that. So I think for me, that's kind of been a big lesson. And I think with people navigating the space, one thing I would say above, in addition to the piece around understanding the ecosystem, understanding the commercial model, is like really pick a specific problem, a specific niche. Healthcare is tricky because it's broad and you're like, I just want to help the people of the world. And in many ways, I'd even say, us in women's health, it's so broad, right? So make sure that you're very, very focused on what is the specific problem that you're solving. And I think in the past, we've had many successful, not many, but a few successful health tech companies. Some have expanded even to the US. And what is consistent is that they solve a very clear problem. They've got a very clear value proposition, and they've got a very clear commercial model. And the minute you get all those three, I mean, one big example is HearX. I mean, they've been fantastic, very, very focused. They're like, we provide affordable hearing devices. Full stop. Not hearing, not extra
hearing
stuff,
accessories,
testing,
and
this is what we do, and we're going to do that well. And I think that's also been a lesson for me around focus, something I'm still learning. My co-founder always reminds me that we need to focus. We need to focus, and I think that's really, really critical.
Yeah, people are at the core of building anything. It's incredible what you've built for others, and like the impact that you're driving, and the incredible partnerships that you have with corporates as well. Just speaking about your co-founder, it's not a common thing to find someone to go on the most difficult journey of your life with and do that and thrive. Tell me about your co-founder.
Well, I have a new one now, but I
Okay.
think, I don't think we speak enough about the challenges of sometimes, co-founding relationships that don't work. So my first co-founder, it didn't work out, and, also being okay with things not working out. It happens, right? And healing and recovering and moving forward from that. And I think definitely that experience had taught me a lot about, if I were to go and find another one, like what would that look like? So I was solo for a little bit. And, my current co-founder, he initially came on as an advisor. And, me being me, someone gives me a finger, I take the whole arm. But I mean, we have great chemistry, but importantly, we have incredibly complementary skills. And I think understanding that piece, who does what do you bring to the table, what do you bring to the table? And I think for me as well, like his incredible experience, he's been at early stage in multiple startups, including Uber. And so it's about, who are the people that you need right now to build alongside, and what is the stage, what is the right person at the right stage, and who do you see yourself growing with? But to be honest, I would say those things are a little bit secondary to the core thing, which is around mission and vision. Are you fully aligned on your North Star? And we spent a lot of time talking about what this kind of healthcare company could look like. All these various pieces of the puzzle, how they live together, how they evolve over time, and what it is we wanted to contribute to the space. And I think that for me, I mean, the shared passion for impact in healthcare across underserved populations, which is women's health and then blue collar workers, was a common thread. And so, yeah, we'd been working together for a few months, and I popped the question, and he said yes. And so the rest is history. So I'm very stoked about that.
Yeah. Can you speak about just the difficulty of the founder relationships that don't work out? And is it just the misalignment on mission and vision? Is it on execution?
It's a lot of different things, right? It's a lot of different things, and I think, but it's normal. It happens, and I think it's not something you can plan for, but it does happen. I think what I've learned from the experience is really to make sure that you have relationship hygiene, as we call it. And so one of the main things we do now with my current co-founder is that we have a coach, and we connect with that coach regularly, and we talk about things and we hash things out. And this is something I've learned from some of the long-standing founders in this country, some of the most successful startups like Yoko. Like doing that work and building your relationship takes work. It is kind of like a mini marriage, right? And being okay with wrestling, because you're not always going to agree. You're not always going to be happy. You have different styles, you have different ways of communicating, you have different strengths. So I think that piece and doing the continuous work, I think, is critical.
Yeah. You guys are building a team of really talented people, some that I know, some that I've worked with and learned from a lot. What does it take to get people who have great experience from other startups to sign on to a new vision? But also, what are you then looking for in the people that will help you drive this mission forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. Where we are right now is really the beginning of growth. And so it was important to bring on the right people at the right time with the right skills. There's a fantastic book called Organizational Physics that was recommended to me by one of another kind of founder in the ecosystem who's further ahead. And that basically speaks about what organizations need at different phases, right? And for us right now, it's definitely kind of that piece. But you're still a startup, so you can't necessarily afford these big fancy salaries. And so I think the concept of fractional executives has worked out great for us, because a lot of the kind of people who are leading the strategy and helping us think through stuff are on a fractional basis, which makes it much more affordable for a startup of our size. And so that for me was really important, and not just experience for experience sake, but experience in the right ways. So experience in building a platform from point X to point 10X, and what that looks like and what that takes. So that's been pretty important. But I think number two, also people you get along with, people you respect, people that respect you, and people that just also care about being part of solving this problem. Like they see it and they like it, and they're like, okay, well, I'm gonna throw my hat in and be part of contributing to this change.
How do you protect and sustain your energy as a co-founder founder? for this thing that will require so much and has required so much?
I've been terrible at that, I must be honest. It's been pretty tough, and I don't, like I said earlier, I don't think we talk enough about founder mental health. And it's been very, very tough, and I don't think I've always been sustainable. But I think the turning point for me was when we were trying to figure out what was going to happen to the company and what's the new direction. And I was pretty upset and sad and quite low about it. And then I had to look at my full life, right? I'm a mom, I have an amazing husband, I have an amazing community, amazing friends. And that my life wasn't over if it was to end, right? So I think coming into this year, I was very intentional about kind of feeding my full self, right? Which is me as a mom and being present, me as a wife, me as a friend, me as a sister, me as a daughter, and what that looks like beyond just being a founder. And I think that's an important piece, because foundership can be your whole identity. And in many ways it is, because you kind of built this thing, you birth it, you feel very close to it, but it's not the sum total of who you are. So that even if this fluctuates, something bad happens, something great happens, you still have a level of stability and a level of content in your life. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a personal note. Your husband is like... I think I've always had a crush on him. And I think about 10 years ago almost. Just asking him to be my mentor and him helping me navigate South Africa's startup ecosystem. Plugging me into one of my dream jobs, I know who he is as a person and how important, with founders, the people that they are closest to, those people are so important to what they eventually build and how strongly they are to building it. How important is that immediate family, even extended family, the friends, the other co-founders who just go, hey, you're okay?
Yeah. I mean, it's crucial. And I think obviously as a woman, it's not always super easy because you're juggling a lot. And having a supportive partner is non-negotiable if you want to be a founder. And I'm so grateful to have that. He not only comes with this wealth of amazing business experience and the startup landscape, so he's always coaching me, always advising me. But he also comes with incredible moral support. There have been so many times I've tried to give up. Believe you me, I've been like, and he'd be like, no, love, back yourself, you've got this. This is just a blip. Keep going. And even, through the challenges and the pivots, he was very supportive. I think that's critical. I think it's crucial, as has been my family. So I think having that support system has been great. And, I've got a circle of very close friends of mine. And I think what's helped is that they encourage you, but they also don't just see you as your business or your thing, right? So when we meet up, I mean, they lighten the room, the space. It's just like, hey, friend, how you doing? Oh, you're amazing. You keep going. It's not just about work and business. And so you get to receive and get, your cup filled by those moments. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And I don't think I would have been able to be here and persevere for so long and be so resilient without that support.
What's the biggest thing that you've learned about yourself on taking on this journey?
That I'm very determined. I think my parents would say I'm very determined, aka stubborn. But I didn't realize, being tested in this journey of, if we're being honest, failure in the first, couple of years, and just trying to be like, no, but let's try something else. No, let's try something else. No, let's try something else. So that's been the biggest thing. I underestimated how determined or stubborn I am. And I think, the other thing is just how much I love the problem we're solving, or I'm trying to solve. I feel deeply connected to the mission. I've always been connected to the mission of women's empowerment, serving women, and how this deeply resonates with a lot of my soul and what I feel I'm called to do. And I'm grateful that I found that. I didn't realize it would be so strong, but I just love my work. Even in moments of real struggle where things weren't working, it was still a joy and a blessing to be able to do the work. And I'm grateful that we can continue helping people, touching lives across our various products and services. Yeah, and it's exciting, and I'm very content, and I feel very blessed.
Yeah. What does the next 5 years look like? The success. What does success look like for Zoe Health in the next 5 years?
Look, it's impacting many, many more lives. I mean, we want to 10x. We want to like really serve people and just, help make their lives better in a meaningful way in healthcare. I'm also attached to the idea of, I believe, across our various business units and products and services, we're solving problems that are not just unique to South Africa. So I'd be very keen to see, whether it's across the continent, whether it's, in other markets, how we can serve and solve problems there as well within the healthcare space. So yeah, so many more lives, and then hopefully, we can take South African excellence and innovation to the world. No DNA, just RSA.
Just RSA.
RSA.
What do you want the next generation of founders to understand about building in technology in South Africa, solving meaningful problems? What it takes?
It takes a heck of a lot of perseverance. But I think the main thing is a deep obsession with the problem that you're building, the problem that you're solving, and not so much what the solution is. Because the solution may not work, the solution may change. But I think having a very good sense of like the problem you want to solve and caring about that will help a lot in those moments of difficulty where you could just give up and go back to corporate and earn way more. So that I think would be the main thing. Like have a deep sense of the problem, not so much the solution, because the solution will change. Yeah.
What is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew when you started Zoe Health?
I know now that I think it's important to enjoy the journey. And I think it's important, to your question earlier, to celebrate the mini milestones. It's important to acknowledge the progress, even if it's from 0 to 0.2. And I think it's not just about the end, it's about the journey there and how you're getting there, who you take along with you, what that feels like, what that looks like, and being content in that. And I think as much as commercially maybe the business wasn't necessarily what we would have wanted it to be in the first couple of years, there was a lot to celebrate, good ideas, good innovation, a great community, great products people loved and services people loved, a good platform. But because you're like, no, but this isn't quite working, I'm still on my way there, you don't actually get to enjoy that and enjoy the people you're working with and enjoy, your partners, your the people that come along, your suppliers, the people that come along on the journey, and just have fun, And so I think in this era, I'm definitely in my let's have fun era. Yes, we still have audacious goals we want to chase, but let's enjoy every moment, every win, and let's have fun on the way.
Yeah. I hope you learn how to celebrate.
Me too.
Thank you so much for this time, but also for teaching, but for continuing to do the work that you're doing. I think the clear dedication that you have to solve this problem and impact so many people is like, it's the most inspiring thing. And I really hope to have another conversation in 5 years once that success has happened, and we can learn to celebrate then too.
100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.